You're probably watching a ton of gear videos because you need something that just works, no endless menus, no surprise weight swings, and definitely no nice-to-have features that end up gathering dust. You want a gimbal that will actually stay balanced when you're out shooting a documentary, a commercial, or even a wedding, and you want it to feel like an investment, not a gamble. The biggest fear is spending a lot of money on a system that looks impressive on paper but turns into a constant source of frustration on set. That's why I'm digging into the DJI Ronin 2 Professional Combo today, because it sits at the sweet spot of power and practicality for serious creators, but it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the Ronin 2 isn't just a bigger version of the consumer-grade gimbals you see on YouTube. It's built around a monocoque carbon fiber shell, which gives it a rigid chassis while keeping the overall weight manageable for a system that can carry up to 30 pounds. That means you can mount a full-frame cinema camera, a prime lens, a matte box, and even a small follow-focus rig without constantly worrying about hitting the torque limit. In the field, that translates to being able to switch from a 6K RED-style rig to a 4K Canon C300 in a single day without having to change the entire stabilization platform. What really matters when you're on location is how the unit handles the day-to-day balancing act. The Ronin 2's fine-tune balancing system is surprisingly intuitive. You start with a rough balance by locking the axes, then use the built-in software to micro-adjust while the motors are powered. I've watched a few cinematographers talk about how they spend an hour or two getting their rigs perfectly dialed in, and the Ronin 2's interface cuts that time down considerably. Because the motors are high torque, you won't feel the straining you get on cheaper gimbals when you start moving quickly or panning with a heavy lens. That's a practical win for anyone who needs to run or climb while keeping the shot steady. One of the less obvious strengths is the onboard power distribution. The Ronin 2 includes hot swappable batteries that not only run the gimbal itself but also feed power to your camera and accessories. In real-world shoots where you might have a monitor, an external recorder, or a wireless transmitter attached, you're not forced to carry a separate power bank or deal with a tangled mess of cables. The batteries even have a self-heating feature, which is a subtle but huge benefit when you're filming in cold environments. Think early morning mountain shoots where a dead battery can ruin your day. You simply swap in a fresh pack, and the system keeps running without a hiccup. The built-in GPS and compatibility with DJI's A3 flight controller are features that sound more like drone tech than a handheld stabilizer, but they have practical applications. With GPS, the Ronin 2 can log its position data, which some post-production workflows use to sync footage from multiple rigs or to add precise motion data for VFX. If you're a solo operator who also does aerial work, pairing the gimbal with the A3 controller lets you create coordinated ground tour shots without having to manually sync everything later. For the average run-and-gun filmmaker, that might be overkill, but for high-budget productions it's a real time saver. Now, let's talk about who should actually consider buying this. If you're a professional cinematographer who regularly shoots with cinema-grade cameras, needs to support a full rig, and values reliability over a low price tag, the Ronin 2 is a logical step up from the Ronin S or the older Ronin 2. It also makes sense for content creators who are transitioning from DSLR setups to full cinema rigs and need a platform that can grow with them. On the other hand, if you're a hobbyist who's happy with a mirrorless camera and a lightweight lens, you'll likely find the Ronin 2's size and price disproportionate to your needs. The unit is substantial enough that you'll need a proper tripod or dolly to transport it safely, and the learning curve for fine-tuning balance can be a bit steep if you've never dealt with a high-torque system before. Speaking of the learning curve, the practical weakness that shows up for many first-time users is the initial setup time. While the balancing process is streamlined compared to older models, you still have to spend a decent amount of time getting everything aligned, especially if you're swapping lenses or adding accessories midday. The hot swap battery system is great, but you have to keep a few spare packs on hand, and those batteries are not cheap. Also, because the gimbal is built for heavy payloads, the motor noise is a bit louder than you'd find on a smaller unit. In a silent indoor environment, that can bleed into your audio track, so you'll want to plan for a good shotgun MIC placement or do some post-production cleaning. Another thing to keep in mind is the integrated camera controls. The Ronin 2 can send start-stop.